So, hello and welcome back yet again to another chapter of Ivanhoe, which yesterday I tried to call Robin Hood because that's what it feels like. I hope everybody is doing good. I hope you are having a good start of your week. It is actually Monday for me. I'm very proud of myself that I am at least on schedule, or at least the schedule in my head. Not that there's like a written schedule anywhere, but I have a schedule in my brain. And I've been slacking lately, so hopefully I can get back on track or maybe even a little bit ahead because I think I'm going to be taking a week off here soon for like a road trip. So it wouldn't really be a week off. I'll be filming a lot of it, but it'll be a week away from home, so that will be a week off. Anyway, I hope you guys are all doing good and enjoying Ivanhoe. It's Robin Hood, that's for sure. Or at least most of the tropes of Robin Hood. So I've been enjoying seeing that in this. I don't enjoy the Old English as much. I feel like it's getting a little bit more comprehensible to me, which is good considering we're 200 pages into this book. If it were still completely a muddle, I would be very, very sad. But yeah, I wouldn't mind this book completely rewritten in modern English, but if it were, then we wouldn't be able to read it as public domain. Yeah, anyway. Needless self-plug insertion. I don't know if I've mentioned it or not, but if you want to follow me over on Patreon, I think you can just follow for free. And then if I ever have a book on there that you are more interested in, you can either become a paid member or I think you can just buy per video. I don't really know how Patreon works, but it's a way to share some things that YouTube doesn't like. So, if you're into that, you could follow me over there or not. Whichever way is all fine. There is one short story on there that is for the free tier. I'll probably be doing a few more of those as time goes on, just little short stories and little things like that that anybody can watch. But yeah, all right, self-insert done. I hate doing self-inserts. And we are going to be jumping back in to Ivanhoe with a quote from The Merchant of Venice. And then we'll be getting into chapter 22. My daughter! Oh, my ducats! Oh, my daughter! Oh, my Christian ducats! Justice, the law, my ducats and my daughter! From The Merchant of Venice. I think somebody doesn't know whether they like money or their kid better. And with that, let's jump back into Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott with chapter 22. Leaving the Saxon chiefs to return to their banquet as soon as their ungratified curiosity would permit them to attend to the calls of their half-sated appetite, we now have to look in upon the yet more severe imprisonment of Isaac of York. The poor man had been hastily thrust into a dungeon vault of the castle, the floor of which was deep beneath the level of the ground and very damp, being lower even than the moat itself. The only light was received through one or two loopholes far above the reach of the captive's hands. These apertures admitted, even at midday, only a dim and uncertain light, which was changed for utter darkness long before the rest of the castle lost the blessing of daylight. Chains and shackles, which had been the portion of former captives from whom active exertions to escape had been apprehended, were hanging rusted and empty on the walls of the prison, and in the rings of one of those sets of fetters remained two moldering bones, which seemed to have once been those of a human leg, as if some prisoner had been left not only to perish there, but to be consumed. At the end of this ghastly apartment was a large fire grate, over the top of which were stretched some transverse iron bars that were half eaten with rust. The whole appearance of the dungeon might have appalled a stouter heart than that of Isaac, who, nevertheless, was more composed under the immediate pressure of danger than he had seemed to be, well afflicted by the terrors of which the cause was still remote. The lovers of the chase say that the hare feels more agony during the pursuit of the hounds than when she's struggling in their fangs. And thus, it is possible that the Jewish people, by the very frequency of their fear on all occasions, had their minds in some degree prepared for every effort of tyranny that could be practiced upon them, so that no aggression, when it had taken place, could bring with it that surprise which is the most disabling quality of terror. And it wasn't the first time that Isaac had been placed into circumstances this dangerous. He therefore had experience to guide him, as well as the hope that he might again, as before, be delivered as a prey from the fowler. And above all, he had upon his side the unyielding obstinacy of his nation and the unbending resolution with which the Jewish people had been frequently known to submit to the worst of evil which power and violence could inflict upon them, instead of gratifying their oppressors by granting their demands. And so, in this humor of passive resistance, and with his garment collected beneath him to keep his limbs from the wet pavement, Isaac sat in the corner of his dungeon, where his folded hands, his disheveled hair and beard, his furred cloak, high cap, all seen by the wiry broken light, would have afforded a study for Rembrandt, if that celebrated painter had existed back then. The man remained without altering his position for almost 3 hours, at the end of which steps were heard on the dungeon stair. The bolts screamed as they were pulled, the hinges creaked as the wicket opened, and Reginald Fondeboeuf, followed by the two Saracen slaves of the Templar, entered the prison. Fondeboeuf, a tall and strong man whose life had been spent in public war or private feuds and brawls, and who had hesitated at no means of extending his feudal power, had features that matched his character, and which strongly expressed the fiercer and more malignant passions of the mind. The scars with which his face were seamed would, on features of a different cast, have excited sympathy and veneration, due to their being marks of honorable valor. It wasn't the case, not in Fondeboeuf, for they only added to the ferocity of his face and to the dread which his presence inspired. This formidable baron was wearing a leather doublet fitted close to his body, which was frayed and soiled with the stains of his armor. He had no weapon except for a poniard at his belt, which served to counterbalance the weight of the bunch of rusty keys that hung on the other side. The slaves who attended Fondeboeuf were stripped of their gorgeous apparel and attired in jerkins and trousers of linen, their sleeves being tucked up above the elbow, like that of butchers when about to exercise their function in the slaughterhouse. Each of them had in his hand a small pannier, and when they entered the dungeon, they stopped at the door until Fondeboeuf himself carefully locked and then double locked it. Having taken this precaution, he advanced slowly up the apartment towards Isaac, on whom he kept his eyes fixed, as though he wished to paralyze him with his glance, as some animals are said to fascinate their prey. It seemed, indeed, as if the sullen and malignant eye of Fondeboeuf possessed some portion of that supposed power over his unfortunate prisoner. Isaac sat with his mouth agape, his eyes fixed on the savage baron with such earnestness of terror that his frame seemed to literally shrink, to diminish in size, while encountering the fierce Norman's fixed gaze. The unhappy Isaac was deprived not only of the power of rising to make the bow which his terror dictated, but he couldn't even doff his cap, nor utter any word of supplication, so strongly was he agitated by the conviction that torture and death were about to come to him. On the other hand, the stately form of the Norman appeared to dilate in magnitude, like one of an eagle who's ruffling up its plumage when about to pounce on its defenseless prey. He paused 3 steps from the corner in which the unfortunate Isaac had, as it were, coiled himself into the smallest possible space, and he made a sign for one of the slaves to approach. The slave came forward accordingly, and producing from his basket a large pair of scales and several weights, laid them at the feet of Front de Bœuf, and again retired to the respectful distance at which his companion had already taken up place. The motions of these men were slow and solemn, as if there impended over their souls some preoccupation of horror and cruelty. Front de Bœuf himself opened the scene by addressing his ill-fated captive. "Most accursed dog, of an accursed race," he said, awakening with his deep and sullen voice the sullen echoes of his dungeon vault. "Do you see those scales?" The unhappy Isaac gave a feeble affirmative. "In those very scales shall you weigh me out," said the Baron, 1,000 silver pounds, after the just measure and weight of the Tower of London." "Holy Abraham!" said Isaac, finding voice through the very extremity of his danger. "Heard man ever such a demand? Who ever heard, even in a minstrel's tale, of such a sum as 1,000 pounds of silver? What human sight was ever blessed with the vision of such a massive treasure? Not within the walls of York. Ransack my house and that of all my tribe, and not then even will you find the tithe of that huge sum of silver." "I'm reasonable," said Front de Bœuf. "If silver is scant, I won't refuse gold. At the rate of a mark of gold for every 6 pounds of silver, you will be free, unbelieving unbeliever, from such punishment as your heart has never ever been able to conceive." "Have mercy on me, noble knight," said Isaac. "I'm old and poor and helpless. It were unworthy to triumph over me. It's poor to crush a worm." "You may be old," said the knight. "More shame to their folly who have suffered you to grow old in usury and knavery. Feeble you might be, for when has a Jew ever had a harder hand? But it is known that you are rich." "I swear to you, noble knight," said Isaac, "by all which I believe, and by all which we believe in common." "Don't lie," said the Norman, "and let not your obstinacy seal your doom until you have seen and considered the fate that awaits you. Think not that I speak to you only to get you terrified, and to practice on the base cowardice that you have derived from your tribe. I swear to you, by that which dost not believe, by the gospel or the church, I swear by the keys that are given to her to bind and loose, that my purpose is deep and peremptory. This dungeon is no place for trifling. Prisoners 10,000 times more distinguished than you have died in these walls, and their fate has never been known. But for you, for you is reserved a long and lingering death, to which theirs were a luxury." He then again made a signal for his slaves to approach, and spoke to them apart in their own language, for he also had been in Palestine, where perhaps he had learned the lesson of cruelty. The Saracens produced from their baskets a quantity of charcoal, a pair of bellows, and a flask of oil. Well, one struck a light with flint and steel, the other disposed the charcoal in the large rusty grate which we have already mentioned, and then he exercised the bellows until the fuel came to a red-hot glow. "Do you see, Isaac?" said Front de Bœuf. "The range of iron bars above that glowing charcoal. On that warm couch you will lie stripped of your clothing, as though you were to rest on a bed of down. And one of these slaves shall maintain the fire beneath you, while the other will anoint your wretched limbs with oil, lest my roast should burn. Now, choose a scorching bed or a payment of 1,000 pounds of silver, for by the head of my father you have no other options."
"It's impossible!" exclaimed Isaac. "It is impossible that your purpose can be real. The good God of nature never made a heart capable of exercising such cruelty."
"Don't trust that," said Front de Bœuf. "It's a fatal error. Do you think that I, who have seen a town sacked, in which thousands of my Christian countrymen perished by sword, flood, and fire, will retch away from my purpose for the outcries and screams of one single wretched man? Or do you think that these swarthy slaves, who have neither law, country, or conscience, nothing but my will, who use the poison or the stake or the poniard or the cord at my slightest wink, do you think that they will have mercy? They who don't even understand the language in which it's asked? Be smart, old man. Discharge yourself of a portion of your superfluous wealth. Repay to the hands of a Christian a part of what you have acquired by the usury that you have practiced, these and so of the rest of your religion. Your cunning may soon swell out once more your shriveled purse, but neither leech nor medicine will restore your scorched hide and flesh once you are stretched on those bars. Tell down your ransom, I say, and rejoice that such a rate that you can redeem will free you from a dungeon, the secrets of which few have ever escaped. I will waste no more words with you. Choose between your dross or your flesh, and whatever you choose, so shall it be."
"So may Abraham, Jacob, and all the fathers of our people assist me," said Isaac. "I cannot make the choice because I don't have the means of satisfying your exorbitant demands."
"Seize him and strip him, my slaves," said the knight, "and let the fathers of his race help him if they can." The assistants, taking their directions more from the baron's eye and hand than voice, once more stepped forward. They laid their hands on the unfortunate Isaac, plucked him from the ground, and holding him between them, waited for the hard-hearted baron's next signal. The unhappy Isaac eyed their faces and that of Front de Bœuf in hopes of discovering some symptoms of them relenting, but the face of the baron exhibited the same cold, half-sullen, half-sarcastic smile which had been a prelude to this cruelty, and the eyes of the Saracens, rolling gloomily under their brows, acquiring yet more a sinister expression by the whiteness of the circle that surrounds the pupil, well, they showed rather the secret pleasure that they expected from the approaching scene, far more than any reluctance to be the agents of that scene. Isaac then looked at the glowing furnace over which he was soon to be stretched, and seeing no chance of his tormentors relenting, his resolution gave.
"I will pay," he said, "1,000 pounds of silver. That is," he said after pausing, I will pay it with the help of my brethren, for I must beg as mendicant at the door of our synagogue before I could ever reach such an unheard of sum. When and where must it be delivered?
Here, said Front de Bœuf. Here it must be delivered. Weighed it must be, weighed and told down on this very dungeon floor. Do you think that you're getting out of here until this ransom is paid?
And what is to be my surety, said Isaac, that I will be set free after this is paid?
The word of a Norman noble, you pawnbroking slave, said Front de Bœuf. The faith of a Norman nobleman, more pure than gold and the silver of all of your people.
I beg your pardon, noble lord,
said Isaac,
but wherefore should I reply wholly on the word of one who can trust nothing to my word?
Because you have no choice, said the knight. Were you now in your treasure chamber at York, and were I craving a loan of your money, it would be thine to dictate the time of payment and the pledge of security. But this is my treasure chamber. Here I have you at the advantage, nor will I again deign to repeat the terms on which I am granting your liberty. Isaac gave a deep groan.
Grant me,
he said,
at least with my own liberty, that of the companions with whom I travel. They scorned me, yet they pitied my desolation, and because they tarried to aid me, by the way, a share of the evil that has come upon them is my fault.
If you mean the Saxon churls, said Front de Bœuf, their ransom will depend on other terms than yours. Mind your own business, man, I warn you, and don't meddle with the fate of others.
I am, then, said Isaac, only to be set at liberty, together with my wounded friend.
Shall I twice have to say, said Front de Bœuf, to you, meddle in your own concern, leave those of everyone else alone. Since you have made your choice, it remains but that you pay down your ransom, and at that, a short day.
But hear me,
said Isaac,
for the sake of that very wealth, which you would obtain at the expense of your...
Here he stopped short, afraid of irritating the savage Norman, but Front de Bœuf only laughed, and himself filled up the blank which the Jew had hesitated. At the expense of my conscience? Thou wouldst say, Isaac. Speak it. I tell you, I'm reasonable. I can bear the reproaches of a loser, even when that loser is you. You were not so patient, Isaac, when you did invoke justice against Jacques Fitz-Dodderel for calling you an usurious bloodsucker when your exactions had devoured his patrimony.
I swear on the Talmud, said Isaac, that your valor has been mislaid in that manner. Fitz-Dodderel drew his poniard upon me in my own chamber, because I craved him for my own silver. The term of the payment was due at Passover.
I don't care what he did, said Front de Bœuf. The question is, when shall I have my own? When shall I have the shekels, Isaac?
Let my daughter go to York, said Isaac, with your safe conduct, noble sir, and as soon as man and horse can return the treasure.
Here he groaned deeply, but then added after a pause, the treasure shall be put on this very floor. Your daughter, said Front de Bœuf, acting surprised. By heavens, Isaac, I would, had I known of this, deemed that yonder black-browned girl was your concubine. But I gave her to be a handmaiden to Sir Brian de Bois Guilbert, after the fashion of patriarchs and heroes of days of old, who said that this was a good thing to do. The yell which Isaac raised at this unfeeling communication made the very vault ring, and it astounded the two slaves so much that they let go of their hold on Isaac. He availed himself of his freedom to throw himself to the ground and clasp the knees of Front de Bœuf.
Take everything that you've asked for, Sir Knight. Take 10 times as much. Reduce me to ruin, to beggary. If you will, anything. Pierce me with your poniard, broil me on the furnace, but spare my daughter. Deliver her in safety and honor. As you were born of a woman, spare the honor of a helpless maid. She's the very image of my dead Rachel. She is the very last of 6 pledges of her love. Will you deprive a widowed husband of his sole remaining comfort? Will you reduce a father to wish that his only living child were laid beside her dead mother?
I would, said the Norman, that I had known of this before. I thought your people had loved nothing but their money.
Don't think so vilely of us,
said Isaac, eager to improve the moment of this apparent sympathy.
The hunted fox, the tortured wild cat loves its young. The despised and persecuted race of Abraham also love theirs.
Be it so, said Front de Bœuf. I will believe in the future, for your sake. But it helps us not at all. I cannot help what has happened or what is to follow. My word is passed to my comrade in arms, and I wouldn't break it even for 10 of you. Besides, why should you think evil is to come to the girl, even if she does become Bois Guilbert's booty?
Why, there must be,
said Isaac, wringing his hands.
When did the Templars breathe anything but cruelty to men and dishonor to women?
Infidel, said Front de Bœuf, and not sorry, perhaps, to seize a pretext for working himself up into a passion, went on. Do not blaspheme the holy order of the Temple of Zion, but take thought instead to pay me the ransom that you have promised, or woe betide your own throat.
Robber and villain,
said Isaac, retorting the insults of his oppressor with passion, which, however impotent, he now found it impossible to hide.
I will pay you nothing. Not 1 silver penny will I pay you unless my daughter is delivered to me in safety and honor.
Are you quite sane, sir? Said the Norman. Have your flesh and blood a charm against hot iron and scalding oil?
I don't care,
said Isaac, rendered desperate by the paternal affection.
Do your worst. My daughter is my flesh and blood, dearer to me than 1,000 times those limbs which cruelty is threatening. Not 1 bit of silver will I give you, unless I were to pour it down your throat. No, not a silver penny will I give you, even if it were to save you from deep damnation. Take my life if you want, and say the Jew, amidst his tortures, knew how to disappoint a Christian. We shall see, said Front de Bœuf. For by the blessed rood, which is the abomination of your accursed tribe, you will feel the extremities of fire and steel. Strip him, slaves! Chain him on the bars! In spite of the feeble struggles of the old man,
The Saracens had already torn from him his upper garment and were proceeding to totally disrobe him when the sound of a bugle, twice and then thrice winded about the castle, penetrating even to the recesses of the dungeon, and immediately after, loud voices were to be heard calling for Sir Reginald Front de Bœuf. Unwilling to be found engaged in this occupation, the savage baron gave the slaves a signal to restore to Isaac his garment, and, leaving the chamber with his attendants, he left Isaac thanking God for his own deliverance, or maybe lamenting over his daughter's captivity and fate. But whatever his personal or parental feelings might prove strongest would be the one he would pray for the hardest. And that is the end of chapter 22. Well, that was a little more actiony, I guess. I still like Isaac, but Isaac, my dude, you don't have much choice but to pay this ransom, and it sounds like you're getting tortured no matter what. We'll do an ew, ew, icky on that one, and wondering what we're going to have to deal with tomorrow. So, thank you as always for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed that chapter as much as I did. It was a little disturbing, but I still did enjoy it. And yeah, hit the thumbs up. Join me on Patreon if you want to. Thank you to Deanna and Hazel, my patrons, and I will see you guys later.